Alrighty, hello guys. No intro here, no fancy anything, nothing fun, no intro videos. We are just gonna get straight into it because today we are talking about the thrill of competition cards esports. Everybody's favorite video. When I talk about cards esports, these videos tend to be quick to make. And relatively fast-paced. So let's see if you can hold on. So why are we talking about cards esports? Well, it is getting towards the end of September, getting towards the start of October, so this is normally the time where we start to have in-game qualifiers for the World Championship. Now, if you've been playing cards since any point of time since last year, since before last year, since this time last year, you will have seen in-game qualifiers before, where you will log in the game. There will be a banner about it in the play tab where it gives you the list of game modes to play in. There will be an in-game qualifier thing, and then essentially you just get matched up into different people. There's a specific window of time on specific days for you to play. You play a bunch of games. You play, I think it's 9 games, and then whoever has the best score in those 9 games across 3 different windows gets to qualify into the World Championship. And that's how you get to the 128 players who play for the World Championship title. And those players get whittled down into whatever it is, the top 16, the top 32, the top 4, whatever it is you see on stream. That has depended on the year. Now, last year, the World Championship format was absolutely terrible, and it reverted from all of the improvements that they had made over the years back to how they did it in 2020. Now, how are they going to do the World Championship this year? Are they going to go back to 2020 again? Are they going to learn from their mistakes? Are they going to go back to a different format? Are they going to try out something new? Are they going to go back to what they did in 2019? No, they're going to do none of the above, because we're going to do something that is even worse than 2019, because 2019 had World Championship in-game qualifiers. 2019, the game was barely out of closed beta. The player base was minuscule. The team was small. They were working their asses off trying to get Allegiance out, the first major expansion in Cards, the first expansion period in Cards. And despite all of that, you know what they had time for? To design and implement and follow through on in-game qualifiers for their World Championship. Now, I might be getting a little bit ahead of myself here. So why am I talking about in-game qualifiers now? Well, you might be wondering, and this is a thought you might have had, well, where are they? They haven't said anything about them yet. And they still haven't said anything about them. But if you go to the page I am on now, which is cards.com/cardsesports, this is their official website. Well, we see, the thrill of competition, which is laughable with what they're doing to esports, but about Cards esports. There will be 4 expansion tournaments over the year, so this is updated. This isn't like an out-of-date website that they don't know about, that they don't keep up to date. This has been updated since February. February is when they announced the expansion tournament, so this is updated at the very oldest, this has been updated in February. So beneath the paragraph talking about expansion tournaments, they say the Cards World Championship is an annual tournament where we crown the Cards World Champion. Competitors qualify through ladder-based in-game qualifiers that are open for anyone to enter. Through several tournament stages, competitors are whittled down to the top 4 who battle it out for the title of Cards World Champion and the lion's share of 12,000 USD. So, the paragraph below the one that they entered in February talks about in-game qualifiers where anyone can enter. So you'd think that this would be up to date, unless they'd radically change something new. So let's scroll down, and here we have a blurb about the 4 expansion tournaments, and they say, in addition, the top 3 players from each tournament will enter the World Championship along with the top 4 players from 2024, for a total of 16. So you might be saying, okay, so wait, I thought they said there's open qualifiers. Who are these 16 who are getting qualified through in advance? Well, that's actually quite normal. Every single year, since 2019, since before 2019 there was no tournaments, but in 2020 and every year since then, players get pre-qualified through the open qualifiers. So if you have won a season, if you won an OCC, and if the top 4 from the previous year all got to skip the in-game qualifier stage and go straight into the 124 stage. So, okay, they were doing the same thing here, but instead of the winner of the tournament, it's actually going to be the top 3 from each tournament, as well as the top 4 players. Actually, this checks out. The top 3 from each player, tournament plus the 4 from World Championship is 16 players. So, this doesn't mean there doesn't have to be in-game qualifiers. It just is simply stating that 16 players will enter the World Championship from these ways, and this is on par with how they've done it previous years. You'd think if there was a radical shift with the way they've been doing it for the last 4 years, that they would say something. And again, they specifically reference in-game qualifiers up here, the paragraph below the one they wrote this year. So, and you'd think, again, they wrote this year too, because this is about expansion tournaments. And you'd think if they wanted to clarify a big change, a massive change that upends the way they have always run things, they would put it here, where they're talking about the World Championship. They also say if a player qualifies twice for the tournament, the next in line will get the extra place. Okay. And then we scroll down and we get to the World Championship. This is a tab specifically talking about the World Championship. They have a screenshot here of Thanatron from the 2023 World Championship. And let's see what they do here. Well, here they talk about the 128 players are randomly seeded into 16 groups. And you might be thinking, hey, that's how they did things in 2021, 2022, and 2023, the good World Championships. And I'm not just saying that because those are the 3 I won. I mean that because those were the 3 that had the best format. Because in 2024, it wasn't 16 groups. It was 1 Swiss round. So this is already out of date. This is out of date for 2024. This has not been updated for the 2024 format. Which, again, is insane because the thing above it is brand new and the thing above that is brand new. But, so that does, sort of discount everything that is in here. In their World Championship blurb on their website under esports, you'd think that they would have updated this in the last 2 years, but who am I to say? I have no experience being a community manager or running an esports scene. I have no experience. So, updating a website at any point in 2 years, making multiple format changes is, maybe that's just really difficult. Maybe that's just out of my wheelhouse. But anyways, do you know what else it references here? Well, once again, it references, well, first of all, the World Championship is our biggest celebration of the passion and competitive spirit of the Kards community, and as such, we take it pretty seriously. Apparently, they really take it seriously. They take it so seriously, this is 2 years out of date. But anyways, the World Championship is fought over the course of 4 months each year. Thousands of players participate in open game qualifiers. Thousands of players participate in their open game qualifiers every year, which they have had every year that the Kards World Championship has existed, which has existed since beta. And they will earn their spot in the 128 stage of the knockout stage, and then there are pre-qualified players who have won previous OCCs and in-game seasons and the preceding World Championship top 4. Okay. Now, if we go to the esports announcement, this was announcing the 8 months ago, so this was in February. This announced the expansion tournaments. So this year, we intend to focus the esports tournaments to 5 events throughout the year. This is going to be the 4 expansion tournaments and the World Championship. All right. So what do they say? They talk about the 4 expansion tournaments. They talk about the prizes for the 4 expansion tournaments. And then it says qualification towards World Championship 2025. The top 3 players from each tournament will qualify directly into the World Championship, plus 12 of the top 4 players from, through 12, and then the 4 players from the previous World Championship. And then this is a classic 1939 typo, because it then says 12 players plus the top 4 from World Championship. Additionally, the top 4 from the World Championship. Nobody proofread this. Again, this is an announcement, but hey, I'm not a community manager. I work in history. We don't interact with people in history. So I don't know anything about writing what is this, 200 words? I know nothing about proofreading 200 words that I'm posting on my website. For my, this company makes millions of dollars. They are putting thousands of dollars on the line for their esports, and they can't proofread, an 150-word post? Or update it 8 months later? But anyways, you'll see in this one, they don't specifically talk about the World Championship format, which makes sense because it's not about the World Championship, it's about the expansion tournaments. But again, you'd think that if the format for the World Championship was determined and ready to be announced, and also a massive step away from everything they've done in the past, this would be the perfect place to mention it in a post regarding esports for 2025. But again, nothing. Now, you might be thinking, okay, but like clearly the website's out of date, like the World Championship website's out of date. This is from 8 months ago. This is the thing that we know is the newest and most up to date. Maybe they just, completely didn't think about talking about World Championships or updated this paragraph here. So okay, well, what did they say in the Discord? Well, this is a post made by Jokal announcing this article. So this article came out in February. This post came out alongside it in February to just give essentially all of the same information. And you will see, it says, in addition, the top 3 players, yada, yada, yada. So this is the 16 players who qualify through the expansion tournament and the top 4 for the previous World Championship. And it says if a player qualifies twice, the next in line will get the spot. And then it says the World Championship is an annual tournament where we crown the Cards World Champion. Competitors will qualify through ladder-based in-game qualifiers that are open to anyone to enter. So this was posted by their community manager in February of this year. And you'd think, okay, if this person made an egregious error, if there was an egregious error and he was completely mistaken, you think they would update this immediately. But no, this was 8 months ago. There has been no announcement updating this. And you think that would be, something big. Now, you might be wondering, why am I showing you a crappy screenshot, like a phone screenshot of part of this post, rather than just simply showing you the actual Discord message? Well, this screenshot is from today. This was 12:30 today. I was walking home from work and took this screenshot. And, okay. Okay, well, why am I showing it to you? This is from today. I can't, 100% confirm that, but this screenshot is from today. Now, why am I showing you this and not the actual article that was posted in the Cards Discord by Jokal? Because the actual one was deleted. In the time, it is now 2:10. So, in the last hour and a half since making this and realizing this and getting confirmation on what I'm about to say, which you almost certainly have figured out already, but in the last hour and a half, they deleted this post. They haven't updated the website. They have not updated the website, but they deleted this post. Now, why am I bringing all of this up? Well, I'm bringing all of this up, and obviously you'll figure this out, because I can now say with 100% certainty, this is public confirmed information, that there is no open qualifiers for the World Championship. There was no 128 stage. There was no 32 stage. There's no group stage. There's no Swiss rounds. We are going to only 16 players. So remember how it talked about 16 players qualify? Well, this isn't like what they're talking about down here, where it's talking about how people who win the OCC will pre-qualify. These 16 players, the 3 from each of the expansion tournaments, plus the 4 from the 2024 World Championship, are the only 16 players in the World Championship. It is a closed event. It is only these 16 players who get to play in it. I don't get to play in it. You don't get to play in it. Unless you're one of those 16 players watching this video, which is possible, and in that case, special you, but I'm not changing the title just for you. None of us get to compete in this. It is a closed tournament. And, okay, well, what are the pros and cons of a closed tournament for the World Championship? Well, the pros are there is, in theory, a higher level of play, because the 16 players are all players who have shown that they are very good at tournaments and have done well in previous tournaments throughout the years, and that is why they are here to display. So the top 16 is going to be, in theory, a better display of skill than an open qualifier, where you might have somebody who kind of just lucks their way into the top 16. That is theoretically possible. Okay, well, what are the other benefits of it? You reward players for playing in your tournaments throughout the year. Not that the pre-qualification spots didn't reward you, but these reward you more for playing throughout the year. But again, not actually rewarding you for being consistent throughout the year. If you get third in one tournament at the start of the year and then not play cards for 10 months, you are in that top 16. But if you get fourth in all 4 tournaments of the year and you got 5th in the previous World Championship, well, guess what? You're probably the best player in the world. You are incredibly consistent, and you don't get to play in this tournament. So I guess we're on to the cons now. The cons is, well, remember how they talked about the thrill of Cards esports? Remember how they talked about it's our biggest celebration of the passion and competitive spirit of the Cards community that they take so seriously? How each year thousands of players participate in the qualifiers? That's why the open qualifiers is important, because it gets people to play cards. It gets people excited about cards. It gets people talking about cards. It gets new people into cards esports. It gets them taking the game seriously. You know, maybe they do well in a open qualifier and then say, hey, I did really well with like my one good deck, but I need other good decks. I'm going to drop a ton of cash on this game because maybe I can earn money back from it. It's an investment for them. And okay, well, what are the costs of running the open qualifier? What are the costs? Well, the open qualifier is something that they've already designed, and it doesn't take any man hours to operate because it's entirely done like any other queue in the game. I guess it makes the event longer because they have to pre-plan it. So I guess, like, you know, if October came around and they realized, oh wait, we didn't do open qualifiers, we totally forgot about open qualifiers, and it's not the time for them anymore. Maybe that, but no, they decided on this system in February. Okay, so obviously open qualifiers is just a much, much better system, and I'm going to give you a quick anecdote personally. So I started playing cards in May 2019, and I played cards for a little bit. It was fun. I stopped playing it after a couple of weeks because I got bored. Then in June or July 2019, they introduced draft mode. I started playing draft mode. I grinded to a full collection, but I didn't find any reason to play ladder. And once I got a full collection, there was no reason to play draft, so I just stopped playing the game. Then, in September or October 2019, I saw on Steam announcements there is an in-game qualifier to qualify directly for the World Championship. And there is only 2 weeks left. So I have to play in this. It's 2 weeks left to get this open qualifier. And I said, you know what? I have a full collection. I'm not doing anything. I'm just going to roll the dice. I'll play. What could happen? You know what? I'm pretty good at draft. I've never really tried ladder, but I'm pretty good at draft. I have a full collection. I can find some decks in the Discord, copy them, see what happens. And you know what? I think in the 27 games I played in the qualifier, I went 26-1. I think I qualified through the open qualifiers in Seed 1, and then I proceeded to play in the World Championship in 2019 into the top 16, where I lost because I was inexperienced. My deck sucked, absolutely. I didn't have a firm understanding of the meta. I didn't have a firm understanding of deck building in cards yet. I didn't deserve to go on from that, but you know what happened? I played in that, and I said, I didn't win this time, but I could win next time. So I'm going to invest in playing the game. I'm going to invest at improving. When they announced OCCs a few months later, I invested my time and energy into getting into the OCCs, and I did well in OCCs. And then 2020 World Championship came around, and I did really well in those. I didn't win, unfortunately, but you know what? You know what I did start to do? I started to stream in that time. I started to make videos in that time. I started to cast in that time. I helped other people who were in the World Championship play, or other tournaments that I wasn't in. I helped them play. I started a coaching service because of this. And then I went on and won the 2021, 2022, and 2023 World Championships, all because I got the belief that I could do well from the 2019 Open Qualifiers. Now, if 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, if they all had closed qualifiers, well, obviously, I would have qualified for them based on my results throughout those years. But if 2019 had a closed qualifier, I would have never gone for it. Because was never thought of doing that. I never thought that I was good enough. I never even had the idea cross my mind to try to play in cards tournaments before the open qualifier. And that's obviously by experience. But again, thousands, they say it here themselves, thousands of players participate in their in-game qualifiers. If even 0.1% of those people go on to invest hundreds and thousands of hours into cards based off of that every year, that is a massive profit for 1939. It's not just interesting for us, the players. It's interesting for 1939, the company. But okay, so obviously, open qualifiers is much, much better than closed qualifiers. Now, okay, so say in February they said, you know what, we're not doing open qualifiers this year. You have to qualify through these 4 tournaments throughout the year. But also the qualification for the first of those tournaments had already closed, and then also the World Championship from last year had happened. So by the time that they announced this, there was only 9 spots left. There was only 9 spots out of the 16 left when they said this, if they had said, hey, there's no open qualifiers in this announcement. But they didn't. Well, okay, well, maybe you can assume. Maybe you can assume from this that there's no open qualifiers, because it doesn't say that there will be open qualifiers. So, maybe if we just want to be, like, absolutely incompetent at our jobs, we could say, well, we didn't say there would be open qualifiers, except they did. Except they did, until today. Until today when they deleted this post. So, okay, so they lied to us until after all of the qualification slots are closed. But that's not entirely true, is it? It is September 26th. The October tournament is played in October, which means, guys, don't worry. We have 4 days. If we want to play in the World Championship, we have 4 days to get top 8 on ladder or top 8 in tournament leaderboards, and then go through the 32 stage of the Swiss rounds to then get to the top 8 stage, and then get from the single elimination top 8 stage into the top 3 to book your ticket. So guys, it's absolutely still, you can still do it. We're finding out about this with 5 days to go for the last 3 slots. Yeah, no, absolutely not. They lied to us, they completely and utterly, and now they're going to try to gaslight us, like they deleted this post. If I didn't have a screenshot on this, you'd just have to take my word that this had happened. Yeah, no, they absolutely lied to us. Now, okay, what do we do about this? What do we do about this? Well, first, okay, who are the 16 players? Now, we don't know the last 3, but we do know the other 13. So let's take a look at those 13 players. Okay, well, this is the most recent. This is the Naval Warfare Expansion Tournament. And the top 3 are Psy, SYS, WDSR, and Taboo. Okay, so these are 3 players who have qualified. This is the United Front Expansion Tournament. We have Radish, we have Tweed Cargo, and we have Azimtesm. Okay, those are 3 players. Slight caveat, Azimtesm actually lost in the first round, but then he got to go through because his opponent had cheated, not in a way that necessarily gave him any, like, actual material advantage, but in a way that we can't confirm that he didn't get extra help in playing better. So, really, Azimtesm is... But, okay, he went down, and then he fought Ephonix. And Ephonix lost, so, okay, Azimtesm won. But Azimtesm here went he went 1-1. If you ignore the first game he lost, he went 1-2. But if you ignore that one, he went 1-1. Well, Ephonix here went 1-2. Which, again, is actually the same scoreline as Mowdy, but Mowdy fought a cheater. And again, this isn't to take anything away from Azimtesm. Lord knows that I qualified to the first World Championship through some questionable means and a whole lot of luck. This is not taking anything away from Azimtesm. My point is, it's kind of unfair to Ephonix. And, okay, well, maybe Ephonix would have lost to Sordow anyways. We don't know that. But, like, it's also unfair to Top Chef, Nuff, and Psy, who all had to play real opponents in the first round, and didn't just get a free bye after losing the game. But okay, whatever. We take Azimtesm. It's fine. We go on to the first expansion tournament of the year, the Blood and Iron expansion tournament. We have HQT 2598, 252160, and Pancake qualifying into the next round, or qualifying into the World Championship. And then we have the top 4 from the 2024 World Championship, which is Spoker, Gorky, Ozzy, and Dandelion. Okay, well, that's really good, except that Gorky has been permanently banned from the game. Okay, so we just take the next person. Well, that's the problem with a bracket system, is the next person is actually 4 people. The next person is HQT, Winner Will Win, Xyloser, and Killswitch. Which of those 4 do you take? Well, okay, HQT already pre-qualified through a different means. But again, if you qualify twice, then it's fine. If you qualify twice, it doesn't matter. They take the next person. So, but does that mean that HQT should be ignored from here, and then they do a 3-person play-in to decide which of these 3 players deserves it? Or do they do a 4-person play-in here to decide which one deserves it? And if HQT wins that, then you drop his qualification from the Blood and Iron tournament and take the person in 4th, which is Nanami. I don't know. These are questions you have to answer, because, again, you didn't tell anybody that it was only these 16 players until now. You haven't even done that. It is public information, but it's not been, like, announced anywhere. That's why I'm not showing you any announcement about this. It might be announced in the next day or 2, because they are now scrambling, because they realize how utterly much they have screwed this up. But Okay, there's no official announcement, but again, how are they going to determine this? And again, I'm not taking anything away from these 16 players. These 16 players are going to have a great tournament. They are all very good players, and it's going to be great. Assuming that they don't completely screw up the format, like, I mean, assuming that it's not like this type of bracket where it's single elimination best of 5, if you're going to skip the previous rounds of the tournament, surely you can at least give us double elimination of those 16 players, but we're probably not going to do that because at this point, 1939, who cares so much about their esports, about the thrill of competition, they take their world championship very seriously. Well, pretty seriously. Okay, pretty. In their defense, they said pretty seriously. Surely they wouldn't lie to us about what the format's going to be. Surely they wouldn't not announce what the format's going to be. Well, sorry, they did announce it, but they announced the wrong thing, and then didn't announce the thing they were doing. Okay. So what is to be done about this? Because at this point, there's not enough time to run in-game qualifiers. Well, they could. They absolutely could, but they're not going to. Okay, so what do we take away from this? What is to be done? Well, there's not a whole lot left to be done this year. To be honest, like whoever the 3 finalists are for the AO Supremacy expansion tournament, those players are going to go in and they're going to join the other 16, and who knows how they're going to determine which of these 4 deserves to take Gorkyu's spot. If they're really incompetent and they really want to make the worst decision, they could just run it with 15 players, and whoever would have been matched into Gorkyu then gets a bye. Are they just going to take Asymptosim? And yeah, okay, so we have to answer those questions. But what else do we have to answer? Well, we have to answer, how did this happen? How did this happen? Because this isn't, okay, this is a massive, massive mistake. Who is at fault here? Who is at fault here, and how are they going to pay? What is going to be the punishment for this mistake? Now, obviously, it's up to 1939. We can't punish them, but, like, surely 1939 isn't happy with this. Like, surely, like, the CEO of 1939, I've met him, I've talked to him, a great guy. Surely he isn't happy that their community managers lied to the community about their flagship annual event. Like, they can't be happy with that, but what's the punishment going to be? Because this isn't the first time something like this has happened. Remember when they didn't tell us about expansion tournaments while holding while holding seasons that qualified for the expansion tournament? Remember when in 2023 they had seeding for the top 4 and then they decided to do it randomly instead of using the actual seeding they had? And then when brought up, hey, maybe you should use the seeding we actually have, the response was no. Like, not no for, like, any specific reason, or no because we want to make it a show, or no because we've already drawn it and we don't want to retroactively go back and change it. It was just a no, we're just going to do it this way. There has been consistent failures in communication in regard to esports, as well as the actual running of esports, not from the organizers. The organizers are great. The organizers are fantastic. I have 0 issues. Well, not 0 issues, but I have next to 0 issues with the actual running of Kards tournaments when they are run. But how they run, and when they run, and what they are, the stuff that is decided by 1939 and their community managers and their head of esports, all of those decisions for the last 3 years have been riddled with incompetency. Their communications have been riddled with errors. And this is just like the culmination. This is the magnum opus of the incompetence of the 1939 community management team. And yes, I'm being very aggressive here. And this isn't because, like, oh, I wanted to play in the World Championship. Was I gonna, if there was open qualifiers, would I have played in it? Absolutely. If I lost in the open qualifiers, or I made 128 and then lost in the next round, would I have been, like, drastically upset about that? No. I don't care. Like, even if they were like, okay, we're going to hold open qualifiers, but if you want to cast in the tournament, you have to not play in the qualifiers. I probably would have just said, okay, I'll cast the tournament and then not played in the qualifiers. This isn't about me. This is about 1939 and Kards esports in general, because Kards is a great game. Kards is a fantastic game. And Kards esports is the lifeblood of the community. And it is just being driven into the ground by these absolute incompetent decisions. And just there's no consequences ever for the people who make these decisions. So yes, I am calling for heads. So, okay, let's take a brief walk down the memory lane and the history of Cards esports and Cards community managers. So in 2019, they didn't really have a dedicated community manager position, but it was kind of taken up somewhat unwillingly, from what I can tell, by Thomas, who is one of the 1939 devs. And Thomas is great. Now, Thomas is not a community manager. Well, he's very good at making certain decisions, but, he is not necessarily like a face-forward, people-interacting esports guru person. That was not really what he was hired for, at least that is my understanding. And again, what we're going to be talking about here is a lot from my understanding. I could be mistaken about some of this stuff. Don't take everything I'm about to say for gospel. If 1939 wants to correct me, they are more than welcome to. This is just going from my understanding. But Thomas, who was sort of like stand-in community manager when the team was small and the company was not making money, and they couldn't hire a lot of like superfluous positions, Thomas was the manager, and Thomas ran the 2019 World Championship. And did it have issues? Yes, it was single elimination best of 3. But was it pretty good? Yeah, it was fine for what it was. It was a game in open beta with a tournament being run by someone with no experience running tournaments. It was pretty good. And then going into 2020, they hired Ollie Krumi, as their community manager / head of esports. And Ollie Krumi works in esports. He has experience managing communities, but he is absolutely works in esports, and he brought in so much knowledge about esports, and he is the one who created the OCC system. He's the one who created the first 2 World Championship systems that improved on 2019, and then the 2021 improved on 2020. Or the 2021 one that improved on the 2021. He's the one who consistently was willing to take swings, listen to the community. He hosted monthly Ask Me Anything streams with some of the with the chief creative officer of Cards, so that people in the community were better able to get their questions asked directly to the devs in charge and really hear from the horse's mouth all of the decisions and the plans and whatnot. Ollie Krumi was fantastic. Did he make mistakes? Yes. Did I disagree with him on some things? Yes. Is he a perfect human being? Absolutely not. But he did a really good job. He created Cards esports for what it was. And then Ollie Krumi left, and they had to replace him. And Ollie Krumi had set in place a framework for Cards esports. He had set in place a framework for these different tournaments, and he had brought in 983, which is the production company that runs the streams and does the actual admin work to run the tournaments. He brought them in and got them contracted with Cards. So after Ollie left, there was all of this stuff in place. So 1939 didn't go out and find a new esports guru expert to run stuff. They just went out and found a community manager, and that's when they brought in Ellen. And Ellen is an excellent community manager. She has experience being a community manager, and she came in and did a fairly good job at running the community. She created the Cards Contributor Program, which I have more stuff to say about that a little bit later down. But Ellen came in and did a pretty good job at maintaining the Cards esports, just saying, you know what, we're just going to keep doing what Ollie had set up, not really going to make any major changes to it, and did a fairly good job at running the actual community side of things and improving on what Ollie may have actually been less good at, which was the more content creating and community driven stuff. Ollie actually was pretty good at that too, with hosted events and content creator feature videos and the AMA streams. But, Ellen came in and did a pretty fine job. Until they started to make changes to esports. And I say they as in the company. I don't know if this was Ellen following some plan that was laid forth before she got there, if this was Ellen taking the initiative and taking swings of her own, or if this was Ellen simply following through with the orders from the CEO, the CCO, whoever it was. I don't know who made these decisions, but they started to make changes to esports. And, not all changes are great. Even not all of the changes Ollie made were great. But Ollie listened to feedback. Ollie held AMAs. Ollie talked to people in Twitch chat. Ollie conversed with people, listened to the people who are affected by the programs that they set up and who played in the events that he ran, and he listened to their feedback. Ellen has never once listened to feedback. And again, I don't know if that's because her hands are tied in terms of what she can do, or if it's that she doesn't want to, or if it's that esports is not a particular passion of hers. But Ellen came in had a really good start, but then stuff started to stagnate. And then Ellen went on maternity leave. And, good for her. Take as long of maternity leave as you want, and I don't have any issues with her going on maternity leave, to be completely clear. But they needed to replace her temporarily. They needed to bring in a second community manager, and that's perfectly fine, because somebody who can do Ellen's work while Ellen is not there, and then when Ellen comes back, you have two community managers, and that would be fairly important. Because Kards, of course, is growing, and you can have one dedicated to esports and one dedicated to the community. Like the more content creation aspect of it, you could have one dedicated to the Chinese community and one dedicated to the Western community. You could split them up however you wanted. But, having two community managers for 1939 would be a pretty good job. So they put out a listing for a community manager position at 1939. And I know for a fact that multiple members of the Kards community applied to that. Some of them had experience being community managers, some of them didn't. But what they all had in common is they were all passionate about Kards. And did they hire any of those people? No, they went out and hired Pete. Now, I know very little about Pete, and you probably have never heard of Pete, unless you were in the community contributor program, in which case you know very little about Pete. Because Pete got hired because he was a friend of a friend who used to work at the same company as most of the 1939 devs came from. And Pete came in, he introduced himself in the community contributor program chat. I think he maybe made one post and announcements. And then Pete promptly stopped doing his job. He just stopped showing up, and they had to let him go because he literally wasn't doing his job. So then we went from one community manager to 0 community managers in a week. But okay, so they put out a new listing for a new community manager. But again, they didn't want to hire a second Pete. Well, how do you not hire a second Pete? I don't know. Hire somebody who is passionate about the community. No, they're not going to do that. Apparently, the one lesson they learned from Pete is that they don't want to hire a remote worker again, because that was the issue with Pete. He just stopped connecting in and communicating with people and didn't do his job. He just went AWOL. He went AFK. So their lesson they learned from that was not, hey, maybe nepotism is bad. Their lesson was, hey, remote work is bad. So they went out and found somebody in Iceland who was willing to work in the office. So what community manager did they find in Iceland? Because Ollie was an Icelandic community manager, and he was great. Ellen's an Icelandic community manager, and she's good. Well, they went out and found Jokal. And what's Jokal's experience? Well, he's a cop. On leave. Okay, well... Okay, so Jokal's a cop, but, like, does he play cards? No. No, he's never played cards. I don't, in fact, know if he's ever played a video game. He really likes, like, tabletop World War II gaming. He has a lot of miniatures. He likes history. He has a somewhat worryingly large amount of World War II military equipment. That's another discussion, but does he have any experience being a community manager or running esports? One of the two. Absolutely not. But okay, we're taking a chance on Jokal. And you know what? Jokal did better than Pete because he showed up and he did his job. Did he do his job well? Absolutely not. Jokal was ludicrously incompetent. Remember all of those just completely illegible posts in the maiden announcements? Those were all by Jokal. Remember all of those like really ugly-looking, confusing, terribly photoshopped posts about nothing that were all over the Kards Discord? Those were all Jokal. I have some other Jokal stories, personal experiences with Jokal. So after the 2024 World Championship completed, Jokal messaged me a few weeks later and said, hey, we'd think that it would be a really, really interesting idea, and, well, I think as the community manager, it would be a really interesting idea to have some videos featuring the top moments from World Championship, and I would love you to talk about them, pick out your favorites, and make a video talking about them that we'll upload to the Kards YouTube. And I said, that sounds like a fantastic idea. I would love to help you with that. How much are you willing to pay me? Like, what's your rate? And Jokal never responded to me, because clearly Jokal thought I would do it for free. And he never got back to me about that, and no one ever ended up ever making the video, presumably because nobody really wants to spend a lot of effort making a video that they don't get to monetize and they aren't being paid for it. But okay, swing and a miss. Now, this is something that if you are one of the Chinese players, or you're in the Chinese community, in general, like specifically like one of the Chinese esports players, or just you care about the integrity of Kards esports, this might be something, an issue you might be aware about, but players in China have been having this issue for years now, where it takes them months and months and sometimes years to get paid for their tournament prize winning. Now, it takes everybody a long time to get paid, but it takes the players in China a particularly long time to get paid, and that is because 1939, under Ellen, decided that, well, they realized, hey, when we send money for prizes, the prizes are bank transfers, and sending bank transfers from Iceland to China ends up costing a lot of money. Now, all of that money could be paid by 1939, but they don't want to go over budget. So instead of 1939 covering the costs of sending the listed prize money to players, instead 1939 takes the bank transfer fees out of the prize money, which means if you're in China, you end up getting like 30 or 40% of the actual money you should be earning, which is obviously a very, very bad thing. Now, what is the solution? Well, the solution would be finding alternative methods of sending money to Chinese players that cost substantially less, or taking on the burden of the cost of bank transfers if you insist on doing bank transfers. Nope, they didn't do any of that. The decision that Ellen ended up going with and not telling anybody, again, I don't know why this wasn't communicated, but the decision that ended up going through and not being told to anybody was that they are going to wait months and months and months, and if necessary, years, so that players who are active will earn multiple prizes from multiple tournaments, and then they will be sent all at once, and then the bank transfer fees only, they eat into less of the total earnings because not all of it is a purely percentage-based thing. There's certain things which are flat rates. So if you send 3 prizes at once, you're going to overall lose less money than if you sent 3 prizes 3 times. But they didn't tell anyone this. They just stopped sending people money, and then when those people said, hey, I haven't received my money, they stonewalled them. So that's an entire thing. And I decided, hey, this seems to be a reoccurring issue which sees no solution in sight. So I said, hey, Jokal. Because, again, this was early 2025, before Ellen came back, right before Ellen came back from maternity leave. So I messaged Jokal, and I said, hey, Jokal, just an idea, but could you guys send money via PayPal? Like, make that an option. Say, hey, if you don't want bank transfers, we can send the money via PayPal. Because PayPal actually works in China. There's a lot of things that don't work in China that work in the rest of the world. PayPal is not one of them. PayPal absolutely works in China. Now, PayPal is not particularly popular in China, as far as I'm aware. It's certainly not like the money-sending method of choice for Chinese people amongst themselves, but it exists. It is something that is available to them. So I said, hey, Jokal, the rates of sending money from Iceland to China through PayPal is meteorically lower than bank transfers. So maybe you should make this optional. Say, hey, we can send you your money right away via PayPal if you want to make a PayPal account, and we will do that. And Jokal said no. And I said, why not? And Jokal said, well, PayPal's not popular in China. And I said, okay, Jokal, but if you announce that it's an option, I am sure there is a lot of Chinese players who are willing to download a program they otherwise don't use and hook it up to their bank so that they receive their payments on time and in a much larger percentage of what they are owed. And PayPal and Jokal said no. And that was where that conversation ended. Jokal's response with just, hey, this is an idea. This is an idea. Why don't you offer PayPal? And not, well, we have to do bank transfers because of tax reasons. And it wasn't okay, we'll look into it, and then, like, 8 months later, they say, we're still talking about it. It was a flat-out, no, your idea is terrible for reasons that I'm not going to explain. And that is basically the same response that I've gotten to all of the feedback I've ever tried to give 1939 about anything since Ollie left. Ollie didn't, to be clear, Ollie didn't just, do everything I said to him. Ollie took, maybe, 10% of my feedback, implemented 10% of my feedback, because I'm not always going to be right about everything. I'm not always going to have the full perspective. But you know what Ollie did is he listened and gave a good reason why he didn't do some things if I suggested them. That is something that Jokal proved pretty incapable of doing. And now you might be saying, okay, well, Jokal is just completely incompetent. He has no experience. He should be fired. Well, unfortunately, Jokal actually quit the company unexpectedly. I don't know the exact timeline, but some point in the last, month or two. And it was unexpected because they were actually trying to ramp up the community contributor program, allegedly. And they were going to do that with the help of Jokal. I don't know how much help Jokal was going to be, but since Jokal was completely and utterly incompetent at the job he was hired to do. But allegedly, they were going to expand on the community contributor program with the help of Jokal. And because Jokal suddenly quit, they are now back down to just Ellen being the community manager. She has returned from maternity leave, and they are going to now take a much longer time to implement any of those changes. I don't know if they're actively looking for a second community manager still at this point, but at the very least, it has now fallen all on the shoulders of Ellen. And, okay, well, Ellen, what are Ellen's qualifications? Okay, she has a lot of experience in the video game industry as a community manager. Okay, I'm not saying Ellen needs to be fired. I'm not saying Ellen needs to be fired, especially because she just had a kid. She has a young family. And I've met her in person. I met Ellen in person in Iceland in 2023, and she's a lovely person. I've communicated with her a lot, and I disagree with her very strongly on how she runs esports, and I don't think she's always effective at communicating. And especially I don't think she is effective at listening to feedback or receiving feedback, but she is a nice person, and she is really good at certain aspects of her job. Now, obviously, the next step forward should be they should hire a second community manager, somebody who plays cards. I feel like that is a bare requirement. They need somebody who is going to actually care about the game. Because Pete never played cards prior to getting his position, as far as I'm aware. Ellen never played cards previously. She tried to play cards a little bit recently, like pretty early on after being hired, and she very quickly stopped doing that because she realized that, hey, no one's going to make me play this game that I don't want to play. And it's fine. Not every community manager needs to play the game, especially not needs to play the game at a deep understanding, like a level where they have a deep understanding of it. And certainly there's a lot of people at 1939 who have a deep understanding of their own game. And Ellen specifically doesn't have to be the one, but okay, somebody, if you're running esports, somebody should maybe have at least some understanding of the game in a at least moderately deep way, so that they can have conversations with the esports players about how esports should be run. And again, not saying that they need to listen to them or implement everything that comes up in feedback, because there are reasons that they do things. 1939 is a business, and there are things about their business that we might not understand as laymen. But my goodness, you need a community manager who cares about cards. Ideally somebody from the community, ideally somebody with an esports background. And I know there are options out there. In fact, you don't even need to hire an official community manager position. You could just rely on 983. 983 runs your tournaments. They are experienced in esports. They are esports running, their business model is running tournaments for esports in different games, but particularly, specifically card games. They have experience with how card game esports are run in a myriad of different games, and you already pay them to run your tournaments. They give feedback. They tell you, hey, we run these tournaments for these games in these ways. We think that these are the best ways to run it. They probably know more about running card game tournaments than anybody else in the cards community, and you already pay them. Just ask them to do it. Instead of continuing to rely on community managers or CEOs. Again, I don't know where these decisions are coming from, but they're clearly coming from somebody who has no understanding of esports. Absolutely no understanding of esports, and it's just over and over, and it leads to these stupid mistakes. And that's the thing. That's absolutely the thing. Where Jokal, if he was still hired, he should be fired. But thankfully he quit. If Pete was still around, Pete didn't stay around long enough for me to have an actual opinion other than the fact that he didn't stay around. But Ellen cannot be the sole person in charge of esports. She is simply not fit to do that job. And again, I don't mean to sound mean, I don't mean to sound rude, but I care about this a lot, and it has been 3 years of this. And this is just the icing on the cake of 3 years of this. And you have so many options. You have so many people within the cards community. And I am not one of them. I am happy with my job now. I am happy with where I'm looking for the future. This isn't me trying to be oh, they should have hired me. I applied to this position. I didn't apply to this position. I never applied to any of the community positions. I considered it at one point because I was hey, after Pete, they really need somebody who knows what they're doing. And I will do that if necessary. And then I decided against doing it because I'm no, they're just going to hire another Nepo baby. And that's exactly what they did. But, again, this isn't about me. This isn't about me wanting to play in the World Championship. This isn't about me wanting to be the community manager. This isn't about me making money from anything. Like, in fact, it's certainly more financially interesting for me to cast the World Championship than to participate in it. Just from like a odds perspective. But hey, I don't know if I will cast the World Championship because one, we have a team of excellent casters other than myself, and two, 1939 might see this and say, you know what, we don't want him casting our tournaments anymore. We don't want that guy to be speaking on our events because he treats us so rudely. Well, guess what? Being treated rudely happens when you are incompetent and can't listen to people and just make mistake after mistake after mistake and refuse to acknowledge it, refuse to accept it, refuse to take feedback on it. Like, and again, they deleted this post and they haven't made an official announcement yet. Maybe that's going to come later today. Maybe that's going to come before this video finishes uploading. Maybe that comes next week. Maybe that never comes. I don't know what their official response is going to be. I don't know if this video is going to influence what their official response is going to be. But again, they lied to all of us for 8 months. 8 months they lied to us. And they continue to lie to us on their website, cards.com/esports. This is out of date. This does not give you the full information you need. And this is incredibly out of date. Like, I don't get it. I genuinely don't get it. And if you're at 1939 and you're watching this, I really hope your gut reaction isn't to get defensive. Because I know I've yelled. I've been loud. I have used rude words. I hope that your response is not like, oh, he's attacking us. Screw him. He doesn't understand us. I hope your response is, you know what? We don't agree with everything he says, but he brings up some good points. And you know what? Even if they disagree with everything I say, you, the community, they will listen to you. Go into the comments of this video. Go into the Steam discussion forums. Go into the Discord discussion forums. Go into the WeChat discussion forums, or the QQ discussion forums, or the Bilibili discussion forums. I don't know a whole lot about the Chinese community, if that's not abundantly obvious. But that is, the majority of Cards players are now Chinese, and I know this affects them more than it affects us in the Western community, especially the stuff with them doing like poor localization, not communicating well to the Chinese players, not paying the Chinese players. Just let your voices be heard, because something needs to give. Something needs to give. 1939's 2020, I think it's their 2024 financial statements came out, and you know what? They're not quite turning a profit yet, but they are definitely past the bend. Things are looking up for them financially. They are getting more and more players, and they are continuing to release expansions. Things as a whole for Cards, 1939, is looking up. And it's not looking up because they are making these cuts to esports. It's not looking up because they're making these changes to the format. It's looking up despite these changes. And it's not going to look up forever if you continue to just have the most incompetent, riddled community management team. It has to change. It has to give. This isn't even just about esports. This is about everything. The community contributor program, you know what we found out collectively as a Western community a few months ago? Apparently, the community contributor program, there is a separate community contributor program for Chinese players, and over there they have financial incentives. 1939 is paying them if they reach certain thresholds and apply their videos to essentially a contest to say, like, you know what, like, these are like the best videos of this month and we're going to give out cash prizes. And again, I understand Chinese videos on Bilibili get way more views than videos on YouTube or Twitch streams because there's a lot more Chinese players who play Cards than there are in Western communities. That's perfectly fine. If you're just saying, you know what, there's more of them, so that's why they have it. But at least be upfront about that. Be open about that. Be transparent about that. And I asked, hey, you know what? A lot of people take my YouTube videos and post them on Bilibili. You might be watching this video on Bilibili right now yourself, and I didn't post it there. Someone else posted it there. And I said, hey, if I post my videos to Bilibili myself, or any other community, like Western content creator posts their videos to Bilibili, if anybody posts their videos to Bilibili, can they apply for these cash prize rewards? And I was told, yes. Anybody can do it. You don't have to be a Chinese national. If you post content on Bilibili, you can apply to these rewards as long as you can join QQ. And you can only join QQ, which is a messaging platform. You can only join QQ if you are a Chinese national with a Chinese phone number and a Chinese ID number. So, yeah. That's a thing. But don't worry, we got promises that they might be doing a kind of similar, maybe program at an undisclosed point in the future that they were going to do very, very quickly, but then Jokal quit, and now suddenly it's an undisclosed point in the future that they might have something that's remotely comparable, maybe. Question marks, we don't know. And that's because we went into the community contributor program chat and had to basically pull answers from Ellen over there. None of this was just told to us outright. So yeah, this video is basically an hour long now at this point. I've repeated myself a little bit. It's a big rant. And I should be talking about air supremacy right now. I want to be talking about air supremacy right now. I'm having a lot of fun playing air supremacy. There's a lot of cool decks that I want to make videos on, and I will be making those videos in the future. But when I learned this news, that they had been lying to us about for 8 months about World Championships, and now they're going to try to gaslight us about it, and they just, completely and utterly fumbled the ball. Fumbled the ball is not even, an accurate analogy for how badly they screwed up. I don't know a lot about American football, but this is basically the equivalent of having the ball and then, biting it in half and then hurling both halves into the crowd and then pulling down your pants and shitting in the field. Yeah. We're going to leave it on that. Thank you very much if you got through this video. And again, give your feedback. Do you agree with me on everything? I don't care if you agree with me on anything, but I'd love to hear what you have to say in these comments, in the Steam forums, every forum you can find. Go out and talk to people about this. And don't say oh, J King said this, J King said that, go watch his video. You can point them to the resources yourself. This isn't about promoting me in any way, shape, or form. I don't care if people watch this video. I care that people talk about the content of this video. But anyways, that's it. Air Supremacy videos will be coming in the future. Thank you very much if you got through this. And 1939, if you are listening, please take these criticisms to heart, and please make real changes. That's it.